Hi, I'm Laura,
Hi, I'm Deanne.
Hi, I'm Philippe.
and welcome to our Lymond Book Club, where we are reading Checkmate by Dorothy Dunnett. And today we are going to talk about part 5, chapters 5, 6, and 7. Dee will lead our discussion. Before we dive in, any thoughts that you two want to share?
This is the last time I'm going to lead one of these, which is a really weird thought. It's like, oh my gosh, we're almost at the end. Yeah, this was interesting. Lymond is obviously not dead, so.
I was going to say, did you skip ahead to see if he's still alive?
No, but he's clearly not dead. Like, that's ridiculous. So, yeah. I do think that Philippa is that she's actually left though. Like, like that, because I thought for a second, like maybe she's gonna get stopped and go heal Lymond or something. And then I was thinking, no. I bet Sevilla and Richard and Philippa and Austin all end up back in England because we've been talking forever. Like they've got to go back to England because we got to have something with Margaret Lennox. So that's got to be like, it's clear like we're moving that direction, like we're getting characters back over there. So that makes sense. I kind of loved the windmill the image of the floating windmills. That was hilarious. Or yeah, the mills. I guess they were water wheels, but the
yeah, it was hard to sort of wrap my head around that concept, but
yeah, they were water wheel mills, not windmills. But anyway, the whole image of them like floating down the river is pretty hilarious.
Good old Dunnett combining her poetic and mythological sources. So we have the mill from O Mill, What Hast Thou Ground, and we have the ferryman and the river Styx.
Yeah, and I'm not quite sure how, but that whole chapter just kept throwing me back to the prophecy. And fire is your friend, and flood is your foe, and powder is your release. And it's like, we have all three things here. So is this the denouement? Is this what it was leading to?
Interesting.
We can discuss that when we get there, though. Yeah, well, I didn't like it, actually, that you left us on two pretty big cliffhangers with both Lymond and Philippa. So,
but I'm not too worried. I mean, they're cliffhangers, but they're not that. Like, there's too much left in the book. they can't be dead yet. I mean, I'm not saying I believe they're going to make it all the way through the book, but they can't be dead yet. Yeah, it was interesting, the whole mill imagery and everything. Like, it was super dark in some ways with like Styx and the river Styx and the like death imagery and the blood in the mill and all that imagery, but it was also kind of ridiculous with the idea of like steering these mills down the river to try and destroy the bridges. And you just had images of these guys with like planks trying to like get these buildings to float in current. And so it was this kind of bizarre combination of dark and hilarious. And
well, yeah, and it was, I mean, Lymond definitely set it up that way as like a last adventure, reviving his Spaniard character.
Yes! It's like the Spaniard. Yeah, that was a good little bit too, fooling the Spanish and all of that. Yeah. That's fun. Okay. Did you have any thoughts, Philippe, before we go?
It's pretty much been said. I mean, the cliffhangers, it was a nice little action sequence I enjoyed. I'm not particularly a fan that Lymond went back to war, and I really, the idea that we discussed last week that he's like starved for sex and it's making him go crazy is really not selling me at all. I'm like, get over it.
Yeah, no.
Because it's gotten like to the point where he's like, I cannot go back to her if I cannot have her. And I'm just like, stop. It's gonna be okay. Just shut up. You both love each other. That's really all that counts.
Yeah, I completely agree. There was another moment about that in these chapters where I was just like, this is completely ungrounded in character. Like the character that's been written for the last 5 3/4 book books, it would just not behave this way. So it's like, it's a little, I'm just kind of trying to ignore that aspect of this motivation because it just feels like it's plopped in the center of this just to separate the two of them. And it's not grounded very well. But I'm just kind of ignoring it because we sort of talked about it last time.
Yeah.
I completely agree. It's
the headaches are back because the marriage is not complete.
Yeah, what?
Come on.
Someone sent me a reply to a Tumblr post I wrote about this and had like a really detailed argument. I'm gonna have to dig it up and see if there's anything in there that we should talk about. I'll try to do that before the next time.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, I'm the same way. Like, I'm like, what?
Yeah. If any of the watchers, if you can ground this bizarre thing, like if you can ground this sort of like my physical desire for Philippa is so strong that I'm unable to function. If you can ground that in his character somehow, I would love to read the argument because the Lymond that I've been reading this whole book, I find this completely unbelievable. So yeah, but I would love to read an argument for why this makes sense. So.
Yeah, and I guess the other thing I take it is like, it's just based in this differing cultural interpretation, whether it's because it's the 70s or it's because it's different, like,
I mean, there was there was definitely a huge movement in the 70s when it comes to like romance novels, which we've talked a lot about genre in these books, which I think is a super interesting discussion. And one genre that they do fit into is the romance novel genre. And there was a huge movement in the 70s in romance novels to have this like completely irresistible passion on the part of the man that often led to rape. Like it was a super common trope I'm thinking of like Kathleen Woodiwiss, Joanna Lindsay, a bunch of the like classic romance novel writers from the 70s and early 80s. And a lot of their hero characters raped the female lead, like just flat out raped her, like in the beginning or towards the middle of the book. And then that was glossed over and they fell in love, and by the end of the book everything was happily ever after. But like their passion was so strong and so irresistible that they forced themselves on the women. So in some ways I guess Lymond like leaves instead of doing that, which is better. So
that's funny. Yeah. I remember that I wasn't reading romance novels in the 70s, but I remember that as a soap opera thing in the 80s that was controversial, but like Luke and Laura or something, like there were certain ships in like popular mainstream soap operas where the man had raped the woman, but then they still stayed a couple and the fans still wanted them together. Like there's some cultural idea around masculine sexuality that does not translate well to the now.
Yeah. And I think it also had something to do with this idea of like the heroine as pure, like the pure nature of the heroine was that she could not feel desire before experiencing it. Like the ignorance of sex did not allow desire. So that led to rape, which then she would be like, now she's informed and no longer virginal. So now she can, like, I think there was something with that too, which is just super gross. Anyway.
At least that's not in here.
Yeah,
thank goodness. So I think Dunnett avoids a lot of problematic tropes that she could have used that were popular back then.
It is interesting you point out the genre thing and how this starts to become a romance, because the earlier ones certainly are not, but then here, like, we have a bunch of romance tropes, even if she doesn't fully buy into them, she's playing with them.
Yeah, she definitely is. Okay, so chapter 5. We start out with the super arrogant French army thinking that they're just going to roll right over the Spanish, and they do not. They get defeated at Dunkirk, actually, which I thought was interesting. And then Lymond is gonna sort of chat with his men. They all catch up, and that was kind of cool. I really like that scene. And then Francis and Philippa exchange letters, and we can definitely talk about the content of their letters, and this particularly the way they end them, I thought is significant. That's kind of the first half of the chapter, and then the second half of the chapter, we'll get into John Elder and the sort of gross conversation he has with Austen, and then that leads into a gross conversation between Austen and Sevilla and Marta. So Elder kind of sets in motion some stuff, which is unsurprising. I think we knew that he's been here for a purpose, and this purpose is to cause destruction, and he is actively doing that. So
he's like the tendrils of Margaret Lennox in France.
Yes, it's like feeding into this. And which he even says explicitly, like, my mistress something, something, and the countess this and that. So we have this first bit about the army. I don't know if there's anything in here. I didn't really underline very much.
I had a couple things. One is just I like the way that she describes things really casually that are atrocities, and she describes them casually, but she doesn't feel casually about them, and it's a really clever thing about her writing style. So we have the opening paragraph about having, like, once you have this giant army, it's all ready to go. There's naturally a strong urge to use it for something. And then if we go like on the next page, of the 8,000 foot, most died by drowning, and the German dead numbered over 1,000. So you start with this like, hey, I got an army, I got money, let's go do stuff, and then you end with like 8,000 people are dead now.
Yeah. Yeah, which I think it just emphasizes again something that we've seen over and over in these books, which is all of this pain and tragedy of war is just because rich and powerful people are bored or want something that has nothing to do with like the good of most people. It's just,
yeah. And you even have that bit about like the delusional king like wanting to go on the battlefield himself, and the men being like, let's keep him away.
Yeah, it's like a ramping up of what happened last time with De Guise, who thought, oh well, I've got to be on the battlefield, so wait. And now the king and the Dauphin have decided to join the fray. It's like a confederacy of dunces.
Yeah.
And then I think it's also telling the way that the king is like kind of clingy with Lymond. He's similar to Ivan in a way. And the way he stops him from going to the camp with his men, like it's like, stay with me and us, like leaders who are just incompetent, and it keeps him away from what he really wants to do, which is what we find out. He's dying to go see Alec and, is it
Fergie, yeah.
And he's calling them their first names the whole time. And when Lancelot Plummer shows up, same thing.
Yeah.
That was a surprise. I did not think we'd see him again.
I was not expecting that.
Yeah. Good. We'll get some resolution on our Russia situation later, but jumping ahead.
Yeah.
So I guess Fergie was shot in the butt, and that's why he was detained.
Well, Alec too, because Alec got shot somewhere that he'd have to lower his trousers for.
That was Fergie. Alec had a musket on his leg, and I had another in a place that had
okay.
to show you.
Yeah. So they both got shot. Oh, poor Fergie.
But
it's nice to have them back.
Yeah.
And everybody on a first name basis.
Yeah. I love that they greet each other, and I love that Lymond said when Adam came in and said, a lot can change in 3 months, and Lymond says, tact is the name you should have upon your tombstone. It's just like, oh, Adam. So true.
And then we find out that Piero Strozzi, because he died, is now getting the blame for everything that's gone wrong.
Yep.
Which is exactly what would happen. The same thing happens in corporate America. If you leave, suddenly everything that's wrong was your fault.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It's like you throw the person under the bus who can't say anything. It's either the low-level flunky or the person who isn't there.
And it's just, I mean, it's another thing that she drops casually, but it's so infuriating because we know that he was one of the only competent ones, and the DeGizes are the ones at fault. And not only like are they the ones at fault, they're the ones at fault to the extent that he died because of their incompetence, and now he's getting blamed for it.
Yeah. I'm so intrigued. Not intrigued enough to actually research it, but I am intrigued to know if that is really true. Like, I'm intrigued about how much of the like records of the battle survive, and how much do we know, like, how incompetent were the DeGizes, and like Piero Strozzi, like, was, you know, did he, I mean, I'm sure the battle actually did play out that way because Dunnett's such a great researcher, but I'm curious how much of the strategy survived. Like, is she actually telling us the real strategy, or is she kind of extrapolating?
I strongly suspect it's based in truth because she did so much primary source research. Like, she knew things that history books don't know or don't talk about. The other thing I was going to say, now that you're about to finish the books, is you can join the Dunnett Society and subscribe to Whispering Gallery, which is this like quarterly publication they send. And it has all kinds of deep dives into stuff like this, which is really, really fun to get into.
Oh, totally.
Remembers.
Is the are past issues like digital, or would we have to like order past issues? Because I want to read all the deep dives.
Yeah, they're not digital. They are you have to buy them on the website and have them mailed to you. But like the last time I tried to buy a bunch of back issues, they were like, sorry, because of COVID, we're not shipping anything to the US. So you can get them. And then some of them are sold out, or they're like photocopies. But anyway, I'm gonna try again. I'm gonna have to check if they're reopened.
Maybe somebody will take on that project and digitize old issues.
It would be so nice. Yeah, I would love to read all this stuff.
Yeah. Oh, that sounds like a treasure trove.
Well, and before the Whispering Gallery, there was like a zine. There was like a photocopied black and white zine, like in the 80s with like art and stuff. And like, I totally want to see that.
Oh,
curiosity. And I bet the discourse was really different back then.
Yeah. Oh, that would just be fun from a like historical perspective, just to see what people were saying in the 80s about these.
And I'm sure people watching this are like, I was there, I can tell you.
What were people saying? I'm so curious. Yeah.
No, I wanted it for this because I've been showing fan art from like Tumblr and stuff, but I bet there's like cool fan art in like zines. Anyway.
That would be cool. If anybody has other links, post them. We would love to see stuff.
Yes, we want to see it all.
To see it all. And so it is exciting to know that very soon we won't have to worry about spoilers anymore, and we can go look at stuff. I'm gonna do so much Googling.
You can read The Captive Prince, Dee.
I know. I mean, that's not my favorite thing about it.
That's when you get desperate.
Yeah. I will read it at some point. That's true.
The old Yahoo groups, which moved to, I forget what it's called, but it's a backup site. There's a lot of really interesting stuff in there, and also the Tumblr tags, the Lymond Tumblr tags, you can follow and like read back. And there's a lot of really interesting like first time readers live blogging their first time experience with like really witty commentary. That's like, I found it fascinating. I spent like a couple weeks reading it.
Oh wow, that would be really cool. Yeah, I stayed away from Tumblr tags like 100%. I haven't looked on Tumblr at all.
Yeah, don't do it until we finish.
No, I won't. But I do love fandoms on Tumblr, so I will definitely dive into that. Okay, so we're in this conversation.
We have the return of the Imperious Eye.
Yes, that's what I underlined as well. What else had been restored to him was not immediately obvious. One of the things restored to him is his headaches, which not good.
They come back rather quickly.
Yeah.
So he says interesting things too. He says he's asked how long he's staying. He says, for long enough, I hope to have this nonsense settled one way or another. And then later he says, I am staying in France, like it's indefinite. So I think he's still thinking he's got like what is it, expiration date. He just doesn't know how long he's going to be functional.
Yeah. I'm also intrigued by people there seems to be some sort of like widespread confusion about why he accepted the Marshal of France thing. Like several people mentioned like, why would he do that? And like Austen makes this super disparaging comment later about how he left Philippa for the baton kind of thing. And I'm just like, are these people stupid? Like, doesn't everyone know that if the king gives you like, what was he gonna do? Say no to the king and then just like run away? It just feels like those comments are so politically unastute. And yeah, I don't know.
I mean, I will say though, to be fair, Lymond has really been, what is it, wishy-washy about this. Like,
yeah, that's
never saying married to Philippa. Wait a minute, totally am. Wait a minute, no.
Yeah, but I mean, the truth is that if you refuse the baton, if you refuse the Marshal of France thing, he would have to like leave the country. He couldn't stay in France if the king wants him to do something and he doesn't want to do it.
He'd have to have a really good reason.
Yeah.
Like, you know, having blinding headaches and can't function.
Yeah, that's true.
It's interesting.
Unable to do the job might be convincing.
It's interesting that the headaches are back during this time of war, because previously we saw when he was in battle or planning or strategy, it was the only time the headaches didn't really affect him. And of course, we know why the headaches are back, but it just shows you how the relationship between him and Philippa has changed.
Yeah. Well, it's like what is causing him stress and what is causing him sort of peace of mind has flipped. You know, like those things have flipped. Yeah. I also like his comment because I loved how sarcastic Lymond is, you know, and witty and sarcastic. And so he makes this comment about how he accepted the brevet. He said, also because I dislike untidy wars as I dislike untidy peacemaking. And it's just like, I'm trying to imagine a tidy war. You know,
it does remind me of, I think he said it to Austen. He said something like, I have a skill at management and that's what I've parlayed into my career. Like, but it is true. Like, and the whole thing about him, like when he was a kid, like trying to set everyone's lives in order, like that's kind of the skill that he brings to like every challenge.
Yeah, he's a logistics guy. Like he does logistics really well.
Yeah. She's a very valuable skill.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I was gonna say like the conclusion of that conversation after Lymond leaves, where the guys talk about what they were doing, they sort of like have a recap. And it's reminded me, Dee, of what you keep saying. Alex says, you know, he's basically cut off help as well as interference. To measure a ladder against it from time to time is justifiable, meaning like to get through his ringed castle, to get through his barriers. So this idea that like by protecting himself, he's hurting himself because he's not letting anyone in to help him.
Yeah. And that of course, you know, I feel like Alec and Adam are the two guys, the two of his men who are the best at reading him and are the most likely to be insightful about what's going on. And so Alec is the one who says it, that, and of course, Adam is the one who said the comment beforehand about him building this high bulwark. Danny is like, let's leave it to Jarrett the next time, because whoever tries is gonna get like pushed away violently. So let's just let Jarrett stumble into that, you know? I was like, that's just insightful all around.
Jarrett is sort of the only one that challenges him when he comes back. And he's like, tell us why you left. It's like, I'm going to stand in your way until you give us answers.
Yeah. I think Jarrett's, he's like a good counterbalance. Like Adam is very gentle. Alec is a little more willing to push, but like Jarrett's really going to push. And I kind of like the conversation, you know, Alec's take on it is sometimes you need a Jarrett to push. And
Yeah, and Lymond's comment earlier when Jarrett's like mad, of course, because he's like mad 90% of the time, about how like apparently we're not supposed to ask how Philippe is, you know. He's just kind of being sort of a dick about it, unsurprisingly. And I love Lymond's response, which was, if you'll tell me, Jarrett, why you received Marta back, I shall tell you why I failed to have my marriage dissolved. The rest, I imagine, is more my affair than that of any other man's, however well disposed he may be. Are you answered? And then Alec is like, yes, he's answered. So, but yeah. So Lymond is just sort of like, you've got your business and I've got my business.
I mean, of course we knew Jarrett wasn't going to get through on the first try here.
No. And honestly, even if he did get an answer, like the odds of him understanding it and coming to the right conclusion, how great are they?
Well, Adam's there, right? Adam's the one in the best position to maybe put the pieces together. But then, you know, we see by the end of these chapters, Adam's been sent off with Philippa, so we lost that.
Yeah. I do find it interesting that Adam has gone off with Philippa to Kate, which they've been writing letters. So there's a little part of me that's like, Not that everything needs to be romance or anything, but I do like the idea of like, I think Adam would be good for Kate.
I do think that Adam's in the right place when he leaves at the end to sort of keep an eye on the situation between Austen and Philippa and Kate.
Yeah. If anybody is the best person to send with Austen and Philippa to try and keep a handle on that situation, it's Adam for sure.
It's Archie that sends him, right? Archie's just like,
I think so. Archie's just like, go after them. Yeah.
I mean, if it isn't Archie, then I trust Adam as well. And Archie's probably in the right place too, even though he's trying to give Lymond drugs again, which I'm jumping ahead. Apologies.
Right. Well, I mean, but there's kind of like a, what was he going to do?
Yeah, I know.
You know, but yeah. We'll get that one. We'll get there when we get there. So then we have this whole bit where we're kind of back to the army and like what's going on. And then Lymond writes a letter to Philippa and Philippa writes a letter back. And they've got some really, they're sort of like, here's all the news. And then at the end of the letters, we get these little bits that seem to be more personal and like the real message of the letters. So
I was going to say also in the first letter that Lymond sends, he's very focused on like basically, if I die, don't worry, Nicholas is going to take care of my affairs and make sure you get home and all this stuff. And then he says, I have no premonition about this. It is only necessary to be practical. But like basically he's thinking about, I'm going to die and I better make sure Philippa is taken care of.
Right. But he's also trying to tell her like, I'm not planning on it. I don't like, I don't necessarily think it's going to happen. So don't worry about that. I just want to be practical. Yeah.
I think an interesting question there is how honest is he being versus just trying to make her feel better.
Yeah. I think he thinks he's going to die.
He's already having the blinding
at
headache.
least at some point in the year. Like I don't necessarily think he thinks he's going to die in this battle or in this, but I think he thinks he's going to die pretty soon because of how bad his headaches are.
Philippe, were you going to say something?
I was just going to say he's already having the blinding headaches and they're coming more and more frequently. So at any point in the middle of the battle, one could hit him. So I think he's just sort of hedging his bets and assuming one of these times it's going to hit me when it's the complete wrong situation, which, you know, we see actually does happen.
Yeah. And I also wonder if he thinks, like, even if he doesn't get struck down in battle or something, but if the headaches are just going to kill him, like, because the frequency, you know, if they're getting closer and closer together, like, there's got to be a sense. I mean, I get migraines periodically. I can't imagine having them daily. Like, people commit suicide from that kind of pain, like not to make light of it, but the idea that you would think you were dying fairly soon seems reasonable.
Well, and he already did try to commit suicide once in this book.
Right.
So I think like part of the evolution in these chapters is him not planning it to planning it. Which I guess we can talk about as we go through the text.
No, I agree. I completely see the last action, him floating down the river, as a suicide attempt.
Kind of going out in a blaze of glory. So yeah. So then I do love the end that he signs it, I am thou thyself, Francis.
Which is, I think, the first time he's written to her signing Francis. He did to Catherine early on, actually. But every time, like Dunnett even has Philippe comment on it in Pawn about how impersonal his signature is. And it always is this like Crawford of Lymond in 70. And now it's finally Francis.
Yeah.
Also using the 70 seal instead of anything having to do with Russia, like he was doing for a while.
I was thinking of the chapters we did last time as like the 70 interlude. Like it is this like place of Lymond and Philippa at peace, kind of, but not really. A bit.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then go ahead, sorry.
No, I was just gonna move on to Philippa. So.
Well, I liked her writing in the same tone as she wrote to Kate, in a very conscious way, for its purpose as then was to strengthen and not to weaken. So that sort of like chirpy positive energy thing is a thing she's doing intentionally to like cheer him up and make sure he knows, or make him think she's okay.
Yeah, there's just, here's what I did with my day, and these are all the things that are happening, and yeah, just newsy, chatty, newsy letter. And then ending it with a different tone, like just as he had ended his letter with a different tone, she ends hers with, I have told you the work of my hands, the place of my thoughts you may know by now. For yours, the door of this kingdom is open by day and by night if you will lend them to me. So just like, if you open your thoughts to me, like, or like I'm open to your thoughts. It's just really beautiful. And then we get another like, are they mystically communicating? Like there's a couple of points in these chapters where it's like, what's going on there? So she goes into a room and her head and her empty hands sought for him. So she's like sending out her mind to him, kind of thing, which
I feel like this instance of it isn't so bad because it's like she's just kind of being in the same headspace as him, like emotionally or something. But like, yeah, later on it becomes like mystical in a way that I can't.
Sitting under the tree, and he has like a moment of peace because he's like, he found what he was looking for.
Well, and there's a moment where she asks like when a particular thing happened, and she's like, was it on a Monday? It's something. It's like, yes, it was on a Monday.
Well, yeah, no, there's something about like, should I tell you the exact moment that I knew something that you had thought? Right?
Yeah.
About burning the letters. And it's
right.
like it was in his mind at the time that he realized he needed to burn her letters, and she knows the exact second he thought it.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
On the other hand, like people believed in these things at the time, and they are very close and connected and on the same wavelength. So you could say they're both believing something because they live in a culture that believes that that thing is true and happens.
Yeah. Yep. So final thoughts on letters, all the army stuff?
Not for me.
Okay. Then we go to John Elder and the rest of this chapter. Ugh.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
out of malice as well as necessity.
Yeah, I mean, gross. Like this guy's terrible.
Oh, my favorite part was Master John Elder was not unused to the knowledge that other people were glad to get rid of him.
Yeah. Everybody hates you.
Yeah, I can go through life that way and just being like, yeah, everybody hates me. It's just an accepted thing. Like, whatever.
Yeah, and he's just saying all this stuff just to rile up Austen and get him like mad and pointed in the direction that Margaret Lennox wants him to go. And just the and Elder's like, take the Countess de Sevigny back to England with you. How that would delight the Countess, my mistress.
Well, he kind of, oh, go ahead. Sorry.
No, I was just making a noise.
Well, he just kind of drags Austen along on this thread of like the final sentence in this section. It basically summarizes where he's dragged Austen along to, which is in return for the papers, Lymond gave Bailey 4 coffers of money, a virgin, and a grave in unhallowed ground as a murderer. So Lymond gets the blame for everything, and Austen knows that Philippa was raped.
I find this sort of like, once I was reading this, and I read it a couple of times, I couldn't quite figure out where John Elder was getting, like, the fact that Lymond's a bastard, yes, like that makes sense that he's telling Austen, like, he's a bastard child, he's sort of faking all of this, he's married Philippa under false pretenses, like blah, 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 blah. All of that makes sense. But the leap from that to Lymond has sold his virgin wife to this old guy is a humongous like leap of logic if you don't know what's happened. So I just got confused about like, why is that believable? That, I don't know.
Well, I think we don't know that Elder believes it. Elder is a tool of Margaret Lennox.
Right.
But we know exactly why Austen would believe it. Lymond himself primed him by going on about raping Philippa, just to try to coax Austen to kill him.
Right. So Elder may not be actually thinking that. He may just be saying it to rile up Austen.
Yeah, I think Elder is just doing the same thing Margaret Lennox does. He'll say whatever to get what he wants.
Okay, because I was like, how did he figure that out? Like, I couldn't figure out where he was getting this. Like, because there wasn't any evidence of that in the house. Like, where is he getting this from? That makes sense if he just like, what's the most horrible thing he can say to Austen? And it just happens to accidentally be true.
He's just fomenting discord because he knows that it will catch. Like, Austen's been a little bit melodramatic about the whole thing. So if we tell a little white lie, even though it's actually a little close to the real truth, but he doesn't know that.
But Elder doesn't know that.
Yeah.
Okay. That makes much more sense. Because I was like, why? This makes no sense. How does he know this? Okay, that makes more sense. So then we get, any other thoughts on Elder and Austen?
Do you think Austen believes it completely? And then, like, what do you think Austen's going to do with it?
I mean, he sort of takes it and runs with it because he immediately goes to Sevilla and throws all of the accusations out that he heard. So I think he's about 98% believe it.
I think Austen doesn't necessarily care if it's true. I think Austen is so angry and so caught up in his hatred of Lymond and his obsession with Philippa that I don't think he actually cares whether it's true. I think he's just like, this is a piece of information that fits in with his preconceived notions about everything. And so he's just going to run with it. And it's going to lead to disaster. Like, I don't know what the ultimate end of this is, but it's going to be bad, whatever it is. Like, I do not see, I actually don't see Lymond and Austen both alive at the end of this book. Like, I think the odds are pretty good one of them's going to die.
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully not Lymond, but
drown in the river.
Unless Austen has like a big old come to Jesus moment from someone.
That's not going to happen.
And I don't think it's going to happen. I think it's going to end in disaster.
I mean, and Austen also immediately catches on the whole was. If Lymond is proved a bastard, there's a good reason to annul the marriage. So it's another way of getting what he wants in the end.
Sure, right.
I do think Austen believes it, but he believes it in the complete lack of skepticism, confirmation bias. This is another thing in confirming what I already believe, which is that.
Yeah. He's definitely not looking for any evidence for why it's not true. He's just like, oh yeah, definitely that, you know.
And he's absolutely outraged and angry, but it's just like he already was, and it's just more fuel for that.
Yeah.
So then his confrontation with Sevilla.
I did love Sevilla for saying like she believes that what Austen said may have happened, but that, and I actually think it makes sense to her that this might explain why Philippa and Francis disappeared suddenly. But she says, there's no man on earth who will make me believe that Francis knew it beforehand. So I was just like, yay, Mom.
Well, I mean, she knows both of them well enough to know that Philippa is the one who chose to do this. Lymond would never have put her up for it. This is the girl that went off and followed him to Turkey, which thankfully turned out okay for her. But she is the kind of person who will sacrifice herself for someone else, just like Lymond does.
Yeah, it is. If Philippa did this thing for Francis, it was a deed of heroic devotion. And then Austen comes back with, and so he has left her, which is like, dude, are you mad that he's with her, or are you mad that he left her? Like, make up your mind. You know,
just mad about the whole not married thing.
Yeah,
I absolutely love Sevilla's response to Austen on 625 when he says, who is he if he is not Francis Crawford? He is Francis Crawford. Because he's basically asking who's his father, and she's telling him the exact truth. His father is Francis Crawford, but she's telling the truth without actually telling the truth. It's so clever.
Yeah. She is very clever.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah.
Well, and I was gonna say also she's still, like we talked about before, but she's very concerned about protecting Richard. None of this is Richard's fault. Need you ruin him also? Like, she's the one with the perspective to say to Austen, like, you need to stop because you're gonna hurt innocent people, and Richard is innocent.
And he just doesn't care. Like, Austen just doesn't care.
I don't want Richard to find out, but it's getting harder and harder to think that Richard won't find out the truth before the end of this book. Like, I'm hoping they can sort of just keep the cloud around his head that he doesn't know any of this, but I don't really see that happening anymore.
Yeah. I'll be surprised if we get to the end of the book and he's, at least if he's unaware of all of it.
Mm-hmm.
I think I can kind of see, like, if we go back to the prophecy bit about how there's, I forget what the two things were, but like something he loves and gets and something he wants but can't have, because
he knows there's two things he wants. One he'll get, one he won't.
Right. So if the one he won't get is like his family, his, you know, the mid-culture, all that, if that's the thing he won't get, then I think that means that Richard doesn't ultimately find out about Lymond's legitimacy and his illegitimacy, because I could really see Richard in like a gesture of honor or whatever, just saying like, I won't live this lie, it's not mine, you know, I like somehow doing some sort of grand whatever. So I can see them like Sevilla and Lymond concealing that part of the truth from Richard. But I agree. I think I can't imagine him not knowing all of it at the end of the book.
one smaller thing in this conversation is this is where Sevilla finds out about Madame Rose being dead.
Oh, yeah.
And there's a bit about her hands shook and she steadied them. So I think there's so much going on with her that she's keeping to herself, but like, you gotta imagine, like, she must be feeling some kind of guilt for her role in all of this. These two young women that helped her when she was young have died because of this. Philippa has sacrificed herself. Like, I don't know. We don't know her perspective on it, but we get little hints that, you know, at least she's not blasé about it.
Mm-hmm.
Sure. And that's not even to go into all of the like tragedy of Lymond's, all of the you know, the tragedy of Francis and all of this, which surely, like, she's definitely completely broken up about it, is really hard. And I think it's easy for me to forget that she's like 70, 75, something like, she's somewhere in her 70s like this point, and especially for the 1500s, that's really old. So she's like super elderly, and it's, yeah, she can't be holding up very well. So.
Should we move on to the last bit of this chapter?
Yes.
Yeah.
Marta.
That, by the way, is not super old now. My parents are in their 70s. They're very spry.
And mine, and they're doing great.
Doing great. But in the 1500s, that was above average. Okay, Marta. So Elder goes to Marta and tries to get her. She kind of brushes him off pretty well, I think. Yeah, although it's interesting, she does make this one comment where she says, I don't suppose you could begin to be enraged as I am by that development, the one of him taking the baton of the Marshal of France. And then, but I don't believe Francis killed Madame Rose. So I was intrigued by that comment. Like, she's enraged by that. And I was like, is she honestly enraged by this? Or is she lying to Elder about it? And if she is enraged by the fact that Lymond has taken this baton, why? Is it that he's abandoned Philippa? Or is it that, because it would seem that, like, it would mean he'd be staying in France.
Well, remember, through this whole book, she's been like the number one Lymond Philippa shipper in the most awkward way ever, of like shoving them together and yelling at them to kiss.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, this is sort of what gives her the impetus to go visit Philippa at Sevigny, and well, that's a whole other discussion we'll get to in the next chapter, but
yeah. And then this whole, like, why should Bailey have killed her? And it's like, really, nobody can figure out why Bailey killed this woman. Marta's like, it's exactly what I'm asking myself. Why should Bailey have killed her? Like,
well, why?
She still doesn't know that the whole connection. She still thinks that her and Lymond are full brothers and sisters of Gavin and Beatrice. So
right, she does.
He hasn't figured everything out yet. She finds that out in the next chapter, actually, which makes her even madder, which we will get to. But
there's sort of an even more practical reason. Like, I just don't understand. Like, why doesn't everyone just assume that Bailey killed the old lady who was in the house where he was staying because she was in the house where he was staying and she was in his way? That seems like a completely reasonable assumption to make. Like, he's just gonna off this old lady so he can stay in the house. Like,
well, but he could have stayed in the house anyway. He had her completely under his thumb.
But people don't know that. Like, I mean, he just killed the housekeeper and buried her in the backyard.
Hey, these are drastic things. You don't just always go around killing housekeepers.
I mean,
Leonard Bailey did.
Anything of Bailey, like, he's so awful.
Marta is getting at something that is like, we're ending a chapter on this, so I think it's a real question. Like, why not just keep her in the dark, drug her up, kidnap? Like, why kill her?
Yeah.
Maybe because Bailey found out the truth, and if the truth means that, Margaret Lennox thinks the truth is going to destroy Lymond, but if the truth is that Lymond is the true heir of Mid-Coulter, then that actually helps him out in the long run.
Right. That's why I assume he killed her, because she knows the actual truth and he doesn't want that to get out. So he killed her. But yeah.
I mean, she is, with these two old ladies dead, everyone who was there with Sevilla at the time is gone.
Is gone. Yeah. So at this point, as far as like, if Bailey knows the truth, at this point, the only person who can actually speak to it is Sevilla, which if Bailey was still alive, I would be very worried for Sevilla. Like that, I'm a little bit worried in case he said something in motion, but yeah, I feel like if Bailey was still alive, the idea of somebody like slipping poison into Sevilla's morning coffee or whatever is highly likely.
I don't think they were drinking coffee casually then, although Sevilla, she's kind of cutting.
Coffee predated tea.
Well, no, but remember how the Dame de Dutons had it for Philippa, and it was definitely like an exotic.
Oh yeah, that's right.
I don't have any other thoughts on that chapter. You guys?
No. Okay. All right. Chapter 6. We've got some army stuff. Blah blah blah. Philippa is writing news. Philippa has reconstituted Lymond's like spy ring, which I just love. She's like restarted it and is sort of compiling all the news and making it logical and organized and sending it to Lymond. There's this little like battle at a village where they end up, instead of it's kind of nice, like you get this sense of like, oh no, we're gonna be stuck here for a long time and delayed by this village battle thing, and then it's like, oh wait, we have cannon. So they're just gonna like lob cannon shot into the village, and then we find out that Lymond is actually deeply troubled, and he goes off on his horse, and then Jarrett goes and connects with Richard and Marta briefly, and then at the end the chapter ends with Marta and Philippa having a discussion, which we will get there. So the first part is like the army stuff and Philippa writing news of the battle. I thought I didn't have a lot that I wrote down about this sort of what's going on with the army, but I did really like just these descriptions of Lymond and his men, and the way that Lymond like is sort of the men of the army and not of the arrogant leader group. Like he marches with the army when he can, and speaks their languages and talks to them, and yeah, it was cool. So does Jarrett. Actually, Jarrett stops, and it says he like dropped back and marched beside them, and Guthrie and Lymond and those guys were already there, and so yeah.
Well, and that's been Lymond's MO for a long time. Even in Russia, he was like going around the campfire trying to do that stuff. And it was obviously like in Game of Kings, that was what he was doing with those men to keep them all under control. Like holding himself as a leader at a distance, but also really engaging there and being in it with them, so that they built a respect for him and would listen to him.
Yeah, but he's also setting himself aside. He's not sleeping. He's not like sitting against a tree, kind of at a distance.
We have swapped Adam for Alec, Alec comes in. When's the last time you got a good night's sleep? Equally observant now that Adam has gone off with Philippa.
Mm-hmm.
There's also the bit right before that where I think it's their mercenaries are going to like hurt civilians and Lymond has them shot.
Yeah, and hanged.
Yeah, which, you know, it's very Lymond, right? Doing justice, but also very ends justify the means in terms of like, oh, I gotta protect innocent people, so shoot my own men, and I might get poisoned later. Or no, he's actually like, no, I won't get poisoned. I'll get shot on the battlefield.
Yeah,
Want his revenge. So not putting his own life as a thing with much value, but doing what's important to protect the innocent.
Yeah. And we've got this whole Philippa's writing all this news, and I was a little, she's writing about Willie Gray, blah blah blah, like temporarily satisfied, he'll be a free man, something. I have a feeling you were intended to be at the end of this particular tunnel. It's like, what was that? I was not sure what was going on there.
So there's this whole thing. He says the Duchess of whatever has told La Rochefoucauld, who has told that
blah blah.
Lord Seton has gone crazy. Yeah, I read this fast and I didn't have time.
It's like I wasn't sure if we were supposed to be picking up on something there or not, because I was like, what particular tunnel are we supposed to be knowing? But okay.
I am 100% sure, knowing Dunnett, that there is an answer, and that if we were just smart and observant enough, we would know. But I think this isn't something I spent time researching, because also I don't really care. It's some political maneuvering thing.
Okay, so it's not some foreshadowing that we should be figuring. Like, it's so often I'm reading these books and I'm like, there are often little bits where I'm like, wait a second, should I pay attention to that because something's gonna happen later? Like, my antenna is always like trying to figure those things out.
I just assumed real life thing that happened that is foreshadowing it, and I have no idea what it is, so I'm moving right along.
Moving on. All right. But she has reopened the network, which begun long ago, had kept him apprised before most people of the shifting allegiances of Europe. So Philippa is Lymond's spy master proxy, which
she kind of was doing
great
before anyway, and now she's telling it. There is a bit in her news which was interesting, which was Master Knox in Geneva has just printed a tract against women monarchs, which has made him the de Guise's special favorite, which is the draft that was in the lady's house, the whorehouse. He had been writing, and he was a Protestant rabble-rouser, right?
Yeah. Knox was a violent Protestant.
But it makes him the de Guise's special favorite. Why? Because it turns the Catholic monarchs even more against the Protestants and feels fair.
Well, I thought it was he gives this treatise against female monarchs, so it's against Mary, which is weird because she's Catholic.
Which Mary are you referring to?
Sorry, Mary of England is Catholic.
Like, yeah, that's what I mean. So I think it makes the de Guises are Catholic too. So I think it's more like it's fueling the Protestant Catholic fire. They don't actually agree with Knox.
They don't. Okay. Yeah.
That boosts their power.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. So.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Just then we get the end of this letter, which is more.
Well, I was going to say before that on 6:30, there's Lymond telling Alec, if Jarrett puts a girl in my tent, I shall kill her. And then he was not getting anywhere, so Guthrie left him. Recounting the incident later, he was quite taken aback by Jarrett's reaction. We don't find out what Jarrett's reaction was. What's going on there?
I underline that because I was curious. Like, if Jarrett puts a girl in his tent, he'll kill her, and then Jarrett's reaction to that news is really, really dramatic.
Yeah, I'm sure there's an answer to this one, and it's probably a more interesting answer than the whole political thing. Because I'm thinking about the girl in the tent that Lymond killed, but Jarrett didn't know about that.
Yeah, that was Udo, and Jarrett wasn't in Russia at all. So I immediately flashed to that too, but then I was like, no, that can't be it.
Well, also, like, Jarrett assumed, you remember when Jarrett saw Lymond in the courtyard after the whole Marta disaster, and he's like, you need to get laid, you know? Like, so obviously Lymond is kind of responding to that and saying no, like being very, very clear that's not what he wants. And then somehow Jarrett would get upset by that. I
say, like, I have never found a friend like shaking and hungover and vomiting and been like, clearly you need to get laid.
Right.
But
yeah. Again, I think it just goes back to this, like, there's some sort of sex, like, is this healing thing that men need in some way? Like, it's just a super weird. I don't know.
Philippe, were you going to say something?
Well, I had another thought. Maybe Jarrett isn't taken aback by the reaction that Lymond doesn't so much want a woman, but the fact that he said he'd kill her. Because Jarrett was with Lymond when they discovered Una, and he saw how he reacted to violence against women in that situation. Mm-hmm. So maybe he thought the fact that Lymond went so far to say is he'd kill a woman, where I think Jarrett was like, that's not something he'd do. Because remember, he wasn't around to see that assassin thing happen in Russia, and maybe he's never really heard of that situation either.
Well, and the other thing is we don't know what Jarrett's reaction was, because like,
yeah,
Jarrett having an angry, out of proportion reaction is very normal for Jarrett. So why would that be taken aback? Like, maybe Jarrett's reaction was something unexpected.
Maybe Jarrett just went, oh, okay. And that's what the unexpected thing was.
I mean, because Jarrett does figure out later, it's not that you need any woman, it's that you need Philippa. So maybe something about this is what caused Jarrett to start figuring that out. I don't know.
I'm kind of used to Jarrett just having the wrong take on every single thing. Like, no matter what happens, Jarrett's take on it is bad. So
it's a pattern.
So I just didn't linger too long on that, because I was like, oh well, there's Jarrett.
I will counter that though with, like, when he finds Lymond having the whatever attack off the horse, and he's like, he needs a hug to like stabilize himself. Like, Jarrett wanted to give a really solid hug.
Yeah.
Instinct sometimes when it's that kind of instinct, like taking care of someone or whatever, very pure. Like, sometimes he's got the right instinct. It's rare. It's very rare.
That is true. That is true.
The rest of the letter. There's the bit where we get the very second I realized that you knew. Whatever.
Yeah. I did love the bit. Yeah. Who would believe I know to the second? Nostradamus? Okay. But this is beautiful. Like, there's nothing of me that does not belong to you. More than your death, I fear mine, because you would be left here to mourn for me. More than your love, I want peace for you. So better your need of me died than that it should become unendurable. I want you to know what you have, that is its span. I have no other rod of the size. God grant quiet rest.
And then we immediately have that other moment of psychic connection that we were talking about earlier. Then, because sleep was in a state more and more foreign to him, he had stayed there, unmoving in solitude, so that the channel was open. And a little later, like a coming home, he knew her mind was with him. They're psychically linked.
It's sweet.
Yeah. It is. But you can see that as like they're actually communicating almost.
Yeah.
I mean, I just tend to think because they're they're not crazy that they really must be having a psychic connection, but I don't believe in psychic connections. But you know, it's if I change my genre assumption and say that it's a fantasy, then I'm fine with it.
Yeah. Right. I have to add fantasy to the genre for these books for that to work. And so I think it's just so weird because it's such a small part of the books. And so and yet at the same time, if we go with like the Dame de Dutance is somehow like orchestrated the entire thing, and she's somehow like the puppet master of, you know, this particular universe, this world, then it's been fantasy all along. So I don't know. I wish it was a bit more explicit. Like I wish if this was a fantasy novel, and if that genre is something we should lay on it, I wish it was a bit more direct. But
I wonder if Queensplay had come first with the Dom doing the mind reading, would we be more open to it? But because the first book didn't have it at all, and when it did introduce that kind of thing, it was to totally be like, none of it's real, the Johnny Bolo thing.
Right.
Maybe that set up our expectation in a way where it doesn't like resonate because we're sort of no. But if the order had been swapped, maybe we'd be more open to it and just be like, this is the genre. It's a fantasy.
Yeah. I think that is true. I think that's a really good point, because the first book did really set us up to not believe this was true. But then kind of all the rest of the books had little bits in it. And so it's kind of like, my instinct is just to keep going, but wait, that's not, you know, instead of.
Well, and it's also just a weird, I guess, genre assumption because she's so rigorously meticulous in her history down to like, you know, doing massive amounts of her own primary source research that like, you feel like, okay, this is clearly historical fiction and she's really into the history part of it.
Right.
And the fantasy is like, wait, what?
Yeah, and then we get like psychic connections. But okay.
Well, like, she is, like, to be fair, like she's so over the top in so many ways and so many tropes and so many things that she does. Like it's just another one.
Okay, so here's an interesting question, which is sort of related to the psychic connection thing. Do you think of all the tropes that she's playing with here, that Dunnett's playing with here, do you think that she is also playing with the soulmate trope with Lymond and Philippa? Do you think?
I do. I was going to say that earlier when we were talking about the psychic connection. It's like soulmates are supposed to have a psychic connection. So.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and you have the stuff coming later about how the Dame de Dutance like predicted that Philippa was the one for Lymond. Like, does she have some vision into these souls need to belong or whatever?
That she was standing over his recovery from the tower situation, just repeating her name to him over and over and over again while he was unconscious.
When you do reread, that is in Queensplay.
Is it?
But you don't know that she's saying Philippa's name, but you do know that she's been repeating a name to him.
Yeah, I remember that thing where she was talking about a name and we were all like, we don't know what she's saying, and we never, I don't even know if we guessed anything, like we didn't know what it was.
I don't remember that, but I
can't remember. So is she like these two souls were born to be with each other or something? And yeah.
Well, but she's not a romantic, I don't think. So
no. Yeah, I agree. She does not seem to be, like, she doesn't seem to care whether that's okay. What is her goal? What was the Dame de Dutance's goal? Because she certainly doesn't seem to care if anybody is happy. Like, she's not trying to like manipulate anyone's fate to benefit them. So what's her goal?
I have a theory, actually. But it's getting ahead of ourselves. It's getting into the discussion with Marta and Philippa.
Mm-hmm.
But they talk about Philippa's like, oh, well, Dame de Dutance was looking for a child of destiny. And like, she didn't find it when Beatrice had you. So she hooked up Francis with Sevilla and had Francis, Lymond. It's like, but what if the child of destiny wasn't actually Francis? What if the child of destiny that the Dame was looking for is the child of Lymond and Philippa, and that's why she was trying so hard to get the two of them together. That it's something that's still coming that we haven't reached yet.
I think it could be something like that, and it could also be like if she's thinking Lymond is her man of destiny that she's bred. Could it be that Philippa is a partner in the destiny thing? She's revived the spy network and stuff, and so it's not about them being happy or romantic. It's about pairing him with someone that can help him to be the man of destiny that she wants him to be.
But I guess my question is, okay, so then what was the goal? Because like child of destiny or man of destiny or whatever, like that's not an end goal in of itself. That's just like, what is he supposed to do? You know, like what is it that this destined person is destined for? And I don't feel like I know that. Like, at least I don't think I do. So I don't know.
That's you. Yeah, I'm not sure if there's an answer yet.
Yeah.
I mean, I think we should come back to that question at the end, but like we have seen him make a ton of difference. And so what the question is like, is it the stuff we've already seen him do?
Right. Yeah, I agree. Like he's made an impact on the world for sure. Mm-hmm. But I'm sort of like, was any of it stuff that the Dame de Détente cared about? Like, do we know that? Like, is there something coming? I don't know.
Well, we do have a whole bunch of foreshadowing of stuff coming, right? Mm-hmm. Protestant and Catholic stuff, the situation with the Scottish commissioners and Mary betraying them. Like, mm-hmm. Is it stuff related to that? So let's talk about Lymond on the horse.
Okay, Lymond on the horse. He clearly, at least I thought reading it, that his blindness comes back to him because the horse is unguided, like galloping unguided, etc. I mean, we're skipping the whole fight with the village, but
I'm sorry. Do you want to say something?
They have a fight with the village and like throw cannon into the village and blah blah blah.
Yeah, I didn't have anything to say about that.
So so the horse like plunges into the gathering darkness and Jarrett goes after it.
Jarrett, being observant for once, he sees Lymond and he's immediately like, something's wrong.
And Jarrett is able to catch him because the horse doesn't seem to have a destination, which seems to imply that Lymond is unable to guide the horse.
So I have, I guess, two comments or questions on this. One is, this is almost exactly how Christian Stewart died. Mm-hmm. Blind on a runaway horse that goes into a ditch. Mm-hmm. The second question is, how accidental is it? Mm.
I mean, if Lymond knew he was going blind, why did he get on a horse? That's the question you have to ask yourself. Did it happen while he was riding the horse, or was he already in a state and was like, this could be it? Like, if I just get on this horse and let it ride and keep driving it forward, this could be my way out.
Mm-hmm. Well, one thing that happens is, at least I read it as the horse got spooked, because it says there's a lighted brand tossed high in the sky, lit the cream mane and tail of an Andalusian mare, and in the doubleted head and bared head of the rider, still as a monument, looking at him. Someone shrilled, "Join us, Marshal." And the Marshal, if he enjoyed the joke, did not answer, but Isabel flung up her head as if a goad quite unaccustomed had been used on her. So either he like kicks her with spurs or hits her with something, or she gets spooked by something and rides off in a sort of uncontrolled way.
Yeah, I think it's likely that she's spooked because we have the bright light and we have the guy shouting.
That's what I thought.
But it is like sort of ambiguous, and the thing that makes me think it was accidental is just that Lymond like has the exchange with Philippa later about him being allowed to make his own decision about his life, and they haven't had that yet.
Yeah, but also, even if he's blind, like he should be able to slow the horse. Like, even blind, like, that's not how riding horses works. like if you're a good horse rider, like, you should be able to slow the horse at that point.
But there's that, like, he hasn't been sleeping, he's really exhausted thing. And then there's also like, well, the horse is like super scared, which was back to the Christian thing where the horse is just, like, out of control.
Yeah. And then the horse dies, which is really sad.
Typical of Dunnett.
Yeah.
It's not a Dunnett book if an animal doesn't die.
Yeah. But yeah, he doesn't, and Jarrett like immediately figures out what's going on, because he's like, Francis, there's a tree just by, like, he's telling him what's around him, so he can tell he can't see. Which,
but it's not just that he can't see, he's like, he can't see, like, just holding on to himself and shuddering, like he's having like some kind of combination of like a panic attack and an emotional breakdown.
Yeah.
Feels a bit like a seizure.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's psychological, and that Jarrett recognizes that because of the lines about how he takes his shoulders and held him as if in a vice, in the obliterating grip that can itself sometimes stop thought and reform what is shattered below it. So it's like the thoughts are what needs to be stopped and reformed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and he, like, Jarrett does the right thing, you know. He really does respond well in this. And again, we get this, like, Lymond's thoughts about Philippa, or desire for Philippa, or whatever, is what's causing this. And Jarrett's just, it's Philippa, isn't it? Philippa herself, not the want of a woman. And it just is crazy to me, like, that the implication is that general need for sex could cause this in Jarrett's mind. He's like, because he has to ask, like, it's Philippa, right? It's not just that you need a woman in general. And it's like, wow, that is an assumption about what lack of sex can do to someone. I don't know.
I assume that this is not just a reaction to Lymond having this shivering breakdown, but it's a follow-up on whatever Jarrett's reaction was.
Mm-hmm.
That conversation Alec reported to get Jarrett to figure this out. And I will say, like, I think what Dunnett is going for is, like, for this pure and perfect and like epic love to be complete, it has to be complete on every level. So it's not just like he needs sex, but it's like the completion of this magic thing where like their minds and their souls are bonded, but they're missing the physical part.
Sure, like there needs to be a consummation of
and even like that Lymond has been neglecting himself so much physically, and that there's this like physical component of how he needs to like stop trying to control everything and just like be. Like, I'm trying to fit it into something that makes sense.
That makes sense. I mean, the idea that all of this is caused by Lymond completely like neglecting his physical and mental health makes a ton of sense. You know, that he has just run himself into the ground for various reasons, and his body has just had enough and is unable to, like, he's unable, the coping mechanisms that he's been using so far are failing him, and he's unable to move forward because of how he's been treating himself. I think that makes complete sense. The thing that I find so odd is that there would have been some sort of widespread thought that this could be caused by lack of sex, which is what Jarrett's comment seems to imply, that there's some sort of cultural understanding that this amount of drastic problems could be caused by this, which is, I just find intriguing.
I mean, no, it's true because like I know the 70s romance novel tropes you're talking about, but I don't know this trope. Like I've never heard of this before. That you can look at someone like shivering and sick and be like, "Oh, he needs sex."
That's so weird. Yeah, it's super weird. So anyway, so it's not that this doesn't make, I think Lymond's breaking down in this way makes complete sense based on how he's been treating himself. Jarrett's understanding of why it's happening is what doesn't make sense. But then again, it's Jarrett. So
I mean, I guess if we want to look at it thematically as like Lymond has been abusing his body and neglecting it and neglecting his physical needs. Along with his spiritual needs, whatever. He's like gotten past the spiritual needs part, but he still hasn't gotten past the physical part. And he can't because he can't consummate marriage, which is how it ends.
So one thing I think is interesting if we want to talk about tropes and genre is that I think this is leading us to, at some point before the end of the book, we're gonna have a sex scene.
Oh yeah,
Lymond and Philippe. Like, I think it's this, like them coming together physically is Chekhov's gun on the wall. Like, it cannot not happen because of the way that Dunnett has been setting this up. Mm-hmm. So, like, but that doesn't mean it'll be good, and that doesn't mean it'll be a cathartic thing. Like, it could be a disaster. So
I really hope it is good, because we have not had good sex in this entire series. The only thing that came close to it was Lymond and Una, and even that was transactional in nature. Every other moment of sex in this book, whether it shows us or it talks about us, has been really skeevy and gross.
Yeah.
And actually, on that note, I mean, maybe that is kind of pointing to what Dunnett's trying to get at, and not very successfully, which is this idea that sex for Lymond has always been transactional, and there's this need to have it be a real thing that's really part of this, epic love that he's experiencing. And like, it could be very specifically what you just said. Like, he's never had non-transactional sex. All of his sexual experiences have been basically abusive or being used or purely transactional in some way.
Yeah. I like the idea, even if it is somewhat like metaphysical, if we are headed towards a happy ending for Lymond and Philippe, which fingers crossed we are, I like the idea that there is something to a balanced relationship, that having like the physical, the emotional, the spiritual, if you will, like all of those aspects of a relation, the mental and intellectual, like all of those, all of those aspects of a relationship, like in balance, so if Lymond and Philippe are, joined intellectually and they are each other's, counterpart with that, and if they're joined emotionally and they're deeply in love with each other emotionally, they are joined physically, that so I like that idea of balance across their relationship. I don't think it justifies this weird all this weird stuff that's happened now, but I like the idea that we might be headed in that direction. I think that's,
and it sort of fits with like how the Lymond's like evolution in this book has gone, where it's like he's making progress but in uneven ways, and then it like gets thrown out of balance and then he goes backwards.
Yeah. And I think you could kind of see it as like, I have to think about this, I'm just kind of speaking as I think, but with all the women that he's had relationships with, and men, all the people he's had relationships with have been out of balance in some way. Have they been like, they're emotionally but not intellectually, or they're intellectually but not physically or emotionally, like as is Philippa like the culmination of his growth in that they are connected on all of those levels.
Yeah, because we can remember that he's had like great sex with Martine, or I don't know, whoever else, like, but in a way that was just the great sex and like a friendly camaraderie, but
the emotion wasn't behind it. The spiritual connection.
Right. Or with Christine, it's like they had Christian, sorry. Yeah, Christian. They had a connection and like an intellectual connection, perhaps some emotional connection. Yeah,
definitely an emotional connection. But yeah, they either never had the chance to consummate the physical, or maybe didn't have the physical on his side. We don't really ever know.
Yeah. Interesting. Okay, so let's see. Jarrett, do we want to say anything about he does tell Jarrett that he has not consummated his relationship with Philippe. Marriage is incomplete and there's no way that I can go on with it any longer. Which again, I think is nonsense.
Drama.
Artificial drama. But,
I will say this is a nice reminder of why we keep Jarrett around. Every so often he comes through.
Yeah, so Jarrett has one of my favorite lines, I think, ever about Jarrett. It was in this chapter when he goes to see Richard and they have a little chat, and then Richard's being a jerk, basically, and then it says, lacking the finesse to reply and unwilling to knock the man out of the window, Jarrett left him. I think that might have been one of my favorite lines about Jarrett.
Yeah, no, I love it. And it super cracks me up because it's also, we have very few scenes that are Richard and Jarrett together. This might be the one where it's just the two of them, because they're almost the same character.
Right.
Yeah. But of course, if you had that character interact with that character, they're gonna get angry at each other.
It's not gonna work at all. And I just love Jarrett's like, he's not witty enough to come back with a reply. If he stays any longer, he's gonna toss him out the window. So but and it is interesting that he goes to see Marta, and it says he was able to relieve all his feelings. She had no comfort to give him, but sent him back at least calmed to the source of his anxiety at Amiens. So, like, I think that's really interesting because it seems like somehow they've had a little bit of a repair of the relationship or a connection, like that seems compassionate in some way. Like she had no comfort to give him, but she does calm him down and sends him back to Lymond, and he's able to sort of pour out what he thinks to her. It implies successfully, like she listens. And so
I almost saw this as a direct counterpoint to the discussion with Lymond, where Lymond, the marriage is incomplete. Well, here we see that even there isn't really an emotional character between these two. This marriage is complete. So I think there was some physical stuff going on. That's what I interpreted from it.
Oh, that she calmed him down that way. Like, I think it's another interesting example of being unbalanced in the relationship. Like, they might have a physical relationship, but they don't have the emotional connection.
Not at all.
At all. Yeah. Nor do they have an intellectual connection, really. So yeah.
I'm not sure this implies the physical. Maybe it does, but it could also have been intellectual but not emotional. Right? Like because I think what's interesting is what she does with this is she's getting information that then she uses in her get Lymond and Philippa together agenda. So did she like he definitely like was even says he was able to relieve all his feelings. He told her what he was feeling. She took this information and acted on it. Did she just go back to him as a way to get information about Lymond and Philippa because she wants them together, or is she also invested in the relationship with Jarrett? But you're absolutely right that it is an interestingly unbalanced relationship in a different way than Lymond and Philippa.
Yeah. And it does seem that like at least like somehow they've come together enough that he spills his guts to her. Maybe she's manipulating him to do it, but he's able to like get everything out, and she calms him down, sends him back to Lymond. So it seems a little bit of progress from hating each other's guts or like running away into the dark, you know? So, I don't know. So then she calls on Philippa and is really blunt. Like,
yeah.
Oh my gosh. Like, whoa. She's just, and there's just multiple things that she's, I kept writing like, whoa, out to the side. Like, I mean, it's, if you think about the ways that Francis responded to Philippa's trauma and just his silent presence and like the kindness of being there but not asking her for anything, like Marta's the exact opposite of that.
I mean, I think it's right back to like she ships them, she wants them to get together, but she's so bad at it. She does the worst possible thing every time, and it goes right back to like she didn't have any positive role models. Nobody raised her the right way. She knows she wants this thing to happen, but she has no concept of how to interact appropriately on a human level to make it happen or to help with it.
Yeah. No. It's like, why are you killing him? You know?
Her philosophy is basically shit happens, get over it.
Right.
It's not how you want to handle this situation.
Yeah. And she's even like, you should go have sex with someone else so you can figure out how sex works, and then you can manipulate your husband into thinking that you want him sexually. It's like, what?
Yeah, and I mean, the thing is, all of this is counterproductive to Marta's own aims. Like Philippa flat out points it out, like he'd see right through that. He'd know, he'd be upset.
Yeah.
Like, even if Marta's heart is in the right place and like she wants them to be happy together, like everything she says wouldn't work.
No. And she's mean about it. Like, just why are you killing him? And after all he's done for you, can you not grit your teeth and take him even if you loathe his sex and all he stands for? Like, just close your eyes and think of England, you know? Like, no.
I mean, I think we had the thing where she was raped by Gautier when she was a kid,
mm-hmm.
right? And she doesn't even understand that it was rape and thinks it was okay.
Yeah,
like she's just really messed up from a young age, and it's sad. But Philippa doesn't deserve all this.
No. This like, and then she's like, I think we do get a glimpse of like how Marta feels about Francis, where she says, have you not learned from your sensitive swain there in Paris, such scruples seldom injure the owner? It is the men like Francis who will allow themselves to be dragged to the marketplace before they will relinquish the code they have chosen to live by, which I think is actually an interesting commentary on what she thinks about her brother, and that he's like, it seems like she thinks he is a man of honor, that he will actually hold to his code in the face of all opposition, which I don't think we necessarily knew about Marta before, like that she thought that of Francis. Did we?
You are a man and you have explained all men to me, something like that. Like, I think we had that realization at the end where she developed some liking or respect for him. And I mean, even the way she comes in, like, as his sister, I want to know why you're killing him. Like, she cares about him in a weird Marta way.
Yeah, but this line about if I owed what you owed to Francis, I should go to bed with my farm manager, with Austin Gray, with any functioning male animal of my acquaintance until I knew I could give my husband a love so well simulated he would never question it. I would do it because I'm of his blood. And I tell you, he would do it for you. And it's just like, ew, that is like her. Yeah, I think like you hit the nail on the head. Like she's been so traumatized and has no clue that her concept of this is so skewed.
Well, and Philippa's response is interesting. She says, no, the voice that suggests that is not to be listened to. The Dame de Dutance was more than an obstinate old woman, wasn't she, Marta? And then goes on about the man of destiny thing. So I think what she's saying here is Marta is parroting what the Dame de Dutance brainwashed her to think.
Yeah. Also, this bit is weird where Philippa says, so she's talking about the man of destiny. Beatrice didn't produce the man of destiny, so she turned her eyes elsewhere for the perfect match for the first Francis Crawford. She found it in Sevilla, but when Sevilla's son came, the stars told her he was not for her granddaughter, which would be Marta.
Which would
So
be
the stars had to tell Dutance that she shouldn't have half siblings be together. Like, gross.
Well, so then I think you can read it as like she tried with Beatrice and Francis the First and got the sickly boy.
Right.
And then she made Marta. And then she wanted Lymond to be with Marta because she wants her blood in the mix somehow. Because from what we know, her blood isn't in the mix. It would have been with this Francis and Beatrice child, Francis Crawford. And it would have been if Marta was for Lymond. But like, I guess she finally reconciled herself to not having her DNA in the man of destiny.
Not having the incest couple be the end results. Good on you, Dame de Dutance, for not doing that. Like, super weird. Because of course, everyone keeps saying, or this has come up more than once, that like Lymond is a child of incest, which according to the modern definition of incest, he is definitely not. But there's this whole like, because his mother was married to a father and a son, therefore he is, which makes no sense to me according to any definition of incest I understand.
It's like your father-in-law is incest, even if you're not related by blood because of the familial relationship.
Yeah, but that doesn't make like Lymond somehow. Yeah, it's weird. But this actually would be.
Yeah.
This relationship would be under any definition, which yeah, super weird.
So how do we feel about Marta's reaction to the truth that she is not actually Lymond's full sibling, and that her father wasn't Gavin and Lymond's father wasn't Gavin, that it was Francis the First?
Her eyes were open in great pain, although she was smiling. She says, how obstinate can an old woman get?
Because she's been lied to time and time again by the Dame de Dutance.
Damn that Dom.
Damn.
Yeah.
And the Dame de Dutance knew too, obviously.
Yeah. Yep.
I mean, the interesting thing is her eyes in great pain, although she was smiling, and Philippa thinking there's nothing that would have surprised her, but this does surprise her, meaning Marta. I don't know. What do you think she's thinking?
She doesn't know her family at all, so she's been holding on to this hope and this truth in her mind that Francis was her full legitimate brother this whole time. And this is almost just another slap in the face. Like, to have lived this far in life believing this and then find out now, after all I've tried to do for him, that he's not even my full brother. Which, I'm sorry, I don't think that matters. If you have a half brother or a full brother, they're still your brother.
Mm-hmm. It's also interesting that it's like, if she's saying, so the world would not have yawned. So she was saying that earlier, what she originally thought was that she and Frances were the bastard children of Gavin and her mother.
Mm-hmm.
And the world would find that boring. It would
Right.
be awful. But the real news is that she's the bastard child of Francis I and her mother, and he's supposedly the bastard child of Francis I and Sevilla. This the world would not find boring.
No, because it's an incest child.
Yeah.
Or at least in their terms of it.
And that makes her that gives her a lot of pain.
Yeah, so I don't know if she's upset about him not being her full brother, or if she's upset about the Dom lying to her, or if she's upset about incest, or
I think it's probably a little bit of all of those things combined. There's so much that's filtering through her mind in that moment, because so much of her, what she's come to believe of her identity was wrapped up in the fact that she was Gavin's and that she was related to the Crawford family, when in fact she is even more related to the Crawford family than she realizes.
Yeah. And her response, like, so he's, how obstinate can an old woman get? So the world would not have yawned. Even so, do you think now that he would not prefer a quick death to this? And then, because she doesn't get an answer from Philippa, she gets super mean, which I think is in character for Marta. Like, but she goes on to say, a raped woman should go on her knees if her husband will accept her. You talk of suffering. None of this is Bailey's fault. Or, like, first of all, none of this is Bailey's fault. None of this is Bailey's fault or Sevilla's or the chiding hand of the one, the Dom. It is yours. There's no schoolgirl since the spheres were created who has made such a drama out of losing her chastity. You claim to love him after all he has done for you. Can you not grit your teeth and take it, etc.? And it's just like, I don't think I've ever seen a clearer example of blaming the victim. Like, it's not Bailey's fault. It's not Sevilla's fault. It's Philippa's fault. Like, whoa.
I think that we were talking a lot about our understanding being different from that of Dunnett at the time when she's writing, but then this is the time of like the 16th century, and even then it was probably a certainly not a universal type of response.
Really not,
because people have always disagreed and had different perspectives, and there's always been people who are more or less progressive, and this is like the least progressive.
Yeah. And surely there'd be a lot of blame for Sevilla, like even in the 1500s. Like, I'm assuming that's one of the driving forces of this entire book, is that Sevilla's reputation would be damaged if this was all known. So
yeah, but I think it's also like it's Marta projecting, like she suffered so much, and so she has no empathy with Philippa because she's been brainwashed into thinking that she wasn't a victim. It was all her own fault in a way, probably, which is like
absolutely
Philippa sees through and even says at the end, like, why did the Dom tie you to us? Why did she make you her messenger? It has brought you nothing but misery.
Yeah.
Like, Marta's another victim of the Dom, and her whole childhood has been in service of whatever the Dom's plans were, and has led her to become this messed up adult, which then goes back to that question of like, does she not have an innermost, or is she just unredeemable? Unsavable?
I think that's really insightful, that like if Philippa is a victim, then Marta has to acknowledge that she is a victim, and I don't think Marta is willing to do that. That she cannot see herself in that way, and so therefore she can't see Philippa that way. There might be something there.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, just think about her throwaway line of like, I was young when Gautier, and it's like, holy crap, Marta, that wasn't okay either.
Yeah, not okay. But
for this, she doesn't really blame him for it. that it wasn't his fault.
Which just makes you think, like, what was the Dom telling this kid?
Yeah. Terrible. Boy.
Okay, other notes I had on this. Philippa thought the headaches had gone, so her psychic connection apparently didn't tell her that. March is also revealing to her that, so Philippa believes that only she and Francis know what happened. And March is like, actually, Austin Gray, John Elder, Sevilla, myself, and the Lennoxes at a minimum. That sucks.
Yeah, that really sucks.
But then also, I think it's very Marta. She gets the opposite of what she wants. What is going on in Philippa's head that leads to her next steps?
So if she believes Marta that she's causing all of this, she's his headaches and his like lack of physical whatever, like all this is being caused by her. So then she's just going to take herself out of the equation and say, I'm going home to my mother. You'll never have to see me again. You don't have to choose to stay away from Sevigny because so you can come home to your home and I'm just going to go away. I love Nicholas Applegarth. It's like the kind face of Nicholas Applegarth had become very stern. So he is not in favor of her leaving.
Leaving someone who loves you for their own good it never works. Don't do it.
Yeah.
No, they're just gonna come after you.
Yeah. I mean, in general, like making decisions for other people based on like not a good idea. Or making decisions based on assumptions of what is good for other people, not a good idea.
At least she doesn't take March's advice directly and go try and like force herself to have sex with Lymond. Like, what a nightmare.
Or Austin.
Ew. Yeah. Yep. So she sets out for Austin and England. End of chapter 6.
I get the England thing, but Austin. But she doesn't know how extreme he's gotten.
Yeah, she's
about to find out.
Yeah. So chapter 7, we have the first section where Archie comes to Lymond with Philippa's letter, which really glad Archie's there. Maybe he makes some questionable decisions, but we like Archie. Philippa asks Sevilla to come with her to England. And then Lymond's doing pretty bad. Plummer returns from Russia, which is fun. So we get a little update on Russia and what's been happening. And we have sort of a opium, no opium situation. And then we have the whole adventure with the Mills and the Spaniards and is he dead or not? Lymond dies in the river-ish, or at least it seems like he's pretty dead, which he's definitely not dead. So yeah, that is chapter 7. So Archie with Philippa's letter.
So I love how the first thing that happens is Lymond spins and goes, "Why are you here?" And Archie's reply is, "There's nothing wrong with Mistress Philippa."
Yeah.
He knows right away what Lymond's worried about and puts him at ease because that's awesome.
Yeah, and then also Archie, of course, immediately knows that Lymond is blind.
And then, it's quite intense how we have this scene of Lymond. Is this where it happens? Where he's like slowly trying to get his sight back so he can read the letter.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
And it's like, remember when he burned her letter without reading it back in the previous book, and now it's like, he would do anything to have that connection with her.
Yeah, he's desperately trying to, and he's like, what did Marta say to Philippa? Philippa, do you know that? He's like, and Archie says no. Like if she knew of the headache, and then Lyman's like, of course Jarrett called him Marta when he was in Paris, so Jarrett spilled the beans to Marta. And yeah.
So it's also interesting, we don't get the full text of the letter. We get the snippets he can see, and we get the memory of the previous thing she wrote.
Mm-hmm.
What do you take that he's taking from the letter? I mean, it's kind of summarized at the end. She had made the sacrifice, and even the guilt, if he wished, need not burden him. She had restored to him the free will he had lost that evening in Paris. She had left him the gift of his life to keep or cut off as he wanted. She's giving him permission to kill himself. She's releasing him from the promise.
Or she's, just something like, I am gone from your life forever. You don't need to worry about your promises to me, or something like that. Like, perhaps, I can't see Philippa writing like, feel free to commit suicide. Like, I don't think that's in the letter, but I can see her writing something about how, like, you're free of me. You don't need to be stressed about me. I release you from all your promises and all the obligations that you have to me. Goodbye forever. I love you. Goodbye forever. And that somehow is also.
I mean, it is very specifically, she had restored him the free will he had lost that evening in Paris. How did he lose his free will? It was because of his obligation to her, because of her sacrifice to Bailey. So now, so you're right. He's free of the obligation.
Yeah, because she did this like terrible thing for him. He was obligated to. She's freed him of that. Yeah.
If they had just stayed in 70, like another year.
Yeah. It all would have been good. He didn't have to go
there. Yes.
That could have been the end. Well, it wouldn't have been a satisfying ending, but it could have been the end of the book.
It could have been like 2 years later.
If these were real people, they could have stayed in 78 and everything would have been fine eventually. But they're characters in a novel, so they can't do that.
A Dunnett novel.
Yeah. It's like literary reality versus actual reality.
So then it's interesting that Philippa then writes to Sevilla, perhaps you would find it possible to leave France soon with Richard. It may be that we shall need one another. So I think she is thinking that Lymond could die, and that then they'd need each other to comfort each other.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's how I read it, that they will need to lean on each other, and the thing that they have in common is their love for Francis. So
and then we have the Scottish commissioners taking off to their own country that had some honesty in it, because the French just keep bullshitting them, and they know it.
They're just done with the French.
But it is an interesting thread that's running through this of like, Lymond tried to warn them, and what's gonna happen?
Yep. So then we get a little bit of more army stuff.
Well, and we have Lymond trying to take care of his physical needs, but like he lays there and can't fall asleep, and he tries to eat food, but he throws it up. So it's like he's putting in the effort, but it's not working.
Yeah, and there's this, the only difference now is that there's no one to grieve over his negligence. So like he's trying, it's not working, and now no one cares, which isn't true. Like there are several people who care, some who are actually with him in his army, like in this moment, intense with him. But it's an interesting view of like what he thinks, which is now like she's gone.
Yeah, but it's also, I mean, it's also interesting. He's not like, oh, good, I'm free of the promise. I can just go die. He's like, I'm going to try. You know, it would be a poor way to reward what she's given him. Right? It would literally be a paltry way to repay her. And there's a duty he owes the men. So he's trying. I mean, he really is trying to get himself together.
Yeah.
And then, like, even the drugs he takes from Archie is like an attempt to get better. It's not like an attempt to drown his issues.
Yeah. And the circle of people who know about his illness is growing. So
the Guises know and sent a physician to give him a powder, which he delivered to Archie.
Yeah.
And powder is your release.
Yeah.
Don't take the Guise powder.
No, hell no.
No. Oh, that's a terrible idea. And then we do get word that Adam reached Philippa and Austin in time, which is good.
I think before that, we also have Lymond's getting to this point of fearing that he would be committed to a command he could no longer justify. Like the idea that at a certain point he's a liability and he's hurting the people that rely on him. Like he's trying not to, but he's in this weird
yeah, and he knows his men are thinking the same thing.
Yeah.
Places that Jarrett, Alec, Danny, and Fergie, whom I'm assuming are the 4 officers who know.
Yeah. But I think he's like, it's kind of a guilt thing. Like I'm a Marshal of France and I have all these people's lives in my hand and I can't be trusted with it. Oh, and then Philippe, you were right. The house was destroyed because it says that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I had thought, oh, the house wasn't destroyed. But then when I read that, I was like, oh, did it get destroyed in the interim? Like, it must have just been destroyed when the gunpowder church thing happened.
Yeah.
And very Lymond of blaming himself for Renee and Isabel being dead, along with blaming Sevilla. But like, I mean, I would blame Leonard Bailey for both of those. But okay, let's all take the sins of Leonard Bailey on ourselves.
Yeah, nope. All Leonard Bailey.
I mean, he probably thinks Renee would still be alive if he hadn't gone to visit her. But again, that's not his fault.
Yeah, he only went to visit her because Bailey set the whole thing up. Like,
it's Bailey. Bailey. And then Lancelot shows up.
Yay!
Right before Lancelot appears is Lymond thinking about that. I shall harness the chariot of lapis lazuli and gold, come into our dwelling in the perfume of the cedars. And then he's thinking a love of sorts he supposed had prompted that once. It mattered not at all now, obliterated by what had happened in that dusty upstairs bedroom with the candle guttering. So this the way he's thinking of it is a love of sorts. Like he's trying to wrap his head around what was going on with Sevilla and Francis I. But like it's always been hard, but it's also like even harder now because of what the outcome was Sevilla or Philippa being raped.
Which again, I think this is Lymond's trauma speaking, but it makes no sense. Like Philippa's rape by Leonard Bailey in no way obliterates the love between his parents. Like the love that Sevilla and Francis I had for each other is in zero way diminished or obliterated by the rape of Sevilla.
Philippa.
Yes.
I think she named his mom and his wife like the similar names on purpose.
Just to drive me crazy. No, but like Lymond can't think of it. You know, like in his mind, he can't think of that place and the house shared by his mother and his father, like without thinking of this horrible thing.
But in a way, the house was a shrine to their relationship, and it has been desecrated by what happened inside of it.
Right,
but their love.
Nothing has happened to their love. Like it's still.
Also, on a literal level, that if Sevilla hadn't lied and concealed the truth, Philippa wouldn't have been motivated to get the papers, which is why she did what she did. So, like, I think Dunnett does a really good job of weaving this, using this house as a symbol, and weaving this poetry and these metaphors around it of the dark side of this beautiful love that became corrupted.
Yeah. And why was it corrupted? Like the hand of the Dom? We don't know. We still don't know why she married Gavin, so.
Yeah. Okay, sorry, I didn't mean to like stop us from celebrating Lancelot Plummer's return.
Yay, Lancelot Plummer comes back from Russia. He somehow survived Ivan, which I find a bit miraculous that he did not get executed.
Just barely made it.
Yeah. We find out Gazelle did not survive.
Killed my Vishnevetsky.
So there's some really interesting stuff in this where one, Lymond is thinking of how they'd lived together for 2 years and how it had been Gazelle who had enabled Philippa and himself and the child to escape from Turkey safely, which is just so Lymond because it was, yes, that's true, but it was also Gazelle that caused the other kid to get killed by bringing both children back. So
yeah,
always blames himself and absolves everyone else.
He's never judged Gazelle as harshly as the rest of us has in the entire series.
And like, okay, to be fair, like her whole reason was like Gabriel wouldn't have believed it if I hadn't brought them back, and maybe she was right. Maybe.
Yeah.
Do you think that Lymond is right that Gazelle knew when she took Vishnevetsky that he was going to kill her?
I don't know, but I thought it was interesting that he says she thought she was following a course laid down long before with each of us under some sort of injunction. So it's like Gazelle believed that like none of them had free will, that they were all following this sort of predestined, pre-laid out course. Which is an interesting way of absolving yourself of responsibility for your own decisions. Like, you know.
Well, I think it's also like Gazelle tried to defy the Dom's prophecies by keeping Lymond for herself instead of sending him back to Philippa. And when she saw that wouldn't work and that no matter what she did, he was going back, she just gave up and decided to go with fate because it was undeniable.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. I'm wondering what Guthrie says about, we also perhaps saw little that you didn't see. She may have thought she was guided by fate, but in the end, I think she rebelled against the decree, in which case she's likely better dead.
I don't understand either of those. How did she rebel, and why would that make her better dead?
Like, is he talking about she rebelled by trying to keep Lymond with her, and therefore she deserved to die? Or she rebelled in some other way? Yeah, I don't know.
There's a line, I forget where, about like far-seeing eyes had seen and like defied, and this implication that like Gazelle was defying the Dom's decrees. Yeah, maybe that was it. And then maybe she died because she tried to defy the Dom. That's, yeah.
Like she deserved death because she tried to keep Lymond with her, and therefore, I don't know.
Well, I mean, there's also this weird aspect of the book of are these moral judgments or are these just like fantasy world building rules? Like, because the Dom is powerful and sees the fates. She's also a really bad person and trying to pretend she isn't. So it's not a moral failing. It's more just a like, you defied the fates, so you gotta die.
I mean, I think we could say like at best, the Dame de Dutance's plan is morally neutral. Like, and more like she's terrible. So the odds of her having like a morally good plan seems to me completely unbelievable. So whatever her plan is and whatever she's trying to do, like, it doesn't seem out of the realm of possibility that she's actually aiming towards something terrible, because she's, her whole, like, the ends justify the means. Her means are bad. So does that mean her ends are somehow good? Like, I don't think so.
Yeah, I think that's actually the question, right? We know her ends are, we know her means are bad. Our question is, how are her ends? And isn't there a line about how she has no sentimentality in her?
Yeah.
Yep. Yep.
Like in the way that she seems to have known that one of the children would die and was fine with that. And it's like exactly how she was with Marta. Like, sure, I'll sacrifice my own grandchild. Why not?
Yeah. Like, I don't trust her judgment about what good ends would be at all. Like, I don't think she's capable of, I don't know, designing a future that's morally good.
We just don't know.
Yeah.
Okay, so then we go on to the opium. Well, and Lyman's having this awful headache, I think, because he's really upset about Gazelle.
Yeah, I think
another one of his.
Yeah.
Another person he slept with that's passed on. I mean, not even just a close acquaintance.
He's like Xander Harris. You sleep with him.
Yeah, and I mean, you could totally see him like, I left her and therefore she died, even though he didn't have a choice in that at all.
Yeah. So then, I mean, he's like, Archie comes with the opium and he's like, you advise it, will it work? And Archie's saying like, for long enough. So we have Lyman's like afraid that he's not gonna be able to keep going. The opium is a way to keep going. And then we have, of course, Jarrett bursts in and knocks it over.
Yeah, grinds it to the floor under his heel, which, whoa, okay.
I mean, okay, I get that completely, though. He was there when Lyman was going through withdrawal, like.
Sure. But again, it's another example of Jarrett just like bull in a china shop, like not asking why things are happening, just assuming he knows, and then destroying whatever's in front of him. And it's like, dude,
I'm more sympathetic.
Take a breath.
I'm more sympathetic to it here than I usually am, although it was the wrong decision.
I mean, I think I might have done the same thing in this case.
Yeah. Because like he's thinking, like, Archie, he's like, Archie wasn't there, he didn't hear you screaming at Volos. Like, yeah. But then, okay, so then, Lyman is saying, like, he's just giving me what I need to stay alive. And then Jarrett says there must be something else. And this is where Lyman has this moment where he smiles. He says, a dejected flag of truce, there is something else, forget the opium. And that's when they decide to do the adventure. Mm-hmm. So I mean, I don't know what do you interpret? What is the something else? What is he thinking here?
Death.
Yeah, like he only has to hang on for a short amount of time, so he can go out in a blaze of glory.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the inadvertent result of Jarrett's reaction is Lymond has lost the one last shot he had at staying alive, which was opium. And so he smiles. He comes to this moment of, okay, I'm out of options. I can die now, and it's okay. Mm-hmm. It will last her off.
Yeah.
And Archie knows exactly what just happened.
Yeah.
At the very end of the section, oh Jesus, lad, are you sure? Are you sure this is how you want it? And then Lyman's, I only know that I want it. It is best done with what one has of pride. I have leave to go.
Just what was in the letter from Philippa.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yep. So then they go on this adventure. Which I had a question. This prayer that's at the bottom of 656 and 657, is that translated in the companion?
Let me check. Starts with Mondu. Okay. All right, talk amongst yourselves. Let's see.
I'm curious.
I never realized the companion was alphabetical. I thought it had like lists of reference by
I
book.
thought it was by chapter.
Yeah.
Yeah, these are honestly really annoying because they're alphabetical and you don't know always what to look for.
Hmm.
The other one, the Game of Kings one, it's only for Game of Kings, is in order of the chapters, which is way more useful.
Yeah.
Okay, I have it. You want me to read you the prayer?
Yeah, please.
All right. The prayer of Blaise de Montluc. O Lord, who made me, help me this day keep untarnished my wit and my judgment, which thou hast given me, and which I hold only from thou. And if it is thy will that I shall die, let me keep in death the good name I strive to deserve through every danger. I do not ask for my life, for thy wish is mine also. Thy will be done. I submit the whole to thy divine mercy. It is apropos.
It is apropos. Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
And then we mix up our Christian imagery with our "Tonight I look to Janus, the patron of portals."
Really? We did bring Janus back in this?
Yeah.
Wasn't that sort of the nickname for he who should not be named?
Yeah. But I do like how she brings all these metaphors and stories together all in this moment with the mill and the
Yeah, that moment when the mills were coming down, it still didn't connect until the poem came back in. O mill, what hast thou ground? I was like, oh, duh.
Yeah.
Forgot about that.
Well, and just dying in a river is so, river Styx. Like, very.
Well, and he even thinks like
the boatman.
Yeah, and now indeed he was the river, the bark, and the oars in a manner more autocratic than even the poet could ever have dreamed of.
Mm-hmm. So I find this plan to be so Lymond. Like, we're going to pilot two buildings down a river and smash into some bridges.
And we're getting in by pretending to be Spaniards.
Right. But not all the bridges, just the bridges we want. Like, yeah.
But it is definitely like, it works on the meta level and the character level. It's a last hurrah before he kills himself, and it's also a last hurrah of this kind of adventure that Lymond would do, and takes us back to the beginning with the Spaniard.
Very sheep with helmets on, which is still, I think, my favorite of the plans.
My favorite is Don Luis. I just like.
Oh, I like the one where they all dress as women.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
That was the prettiest one.
That was a good one. Oh, the plans. Yeah, and then they deliberately mention like that Lymond's been calling everyone by their first name in this plan, and that like they have this camaraderie again and all of that.
Which is, again, like, he makes progress and then he goes backwards. Like, he's treating his friends as friends again, but also it's because he's about to kill himself.
Yeah. I didn't have a ton to say about this plan. Like, it was fun to read. It was kind of, they were like, I loved the bit where Fergie says something about assuming in the first place the court was willing to accept your definition of a watermill as a seaworthy object. Just like lines like that made me crack up. And
I don't know, this scene always stresses me out because, like, the guys are all having fun and Lymond is trying to kill himself, and it's like, this is I don't know. I just feel
none
bad.
of them see it.
Yeah.
Except for Archie.
Yeah. Well, until Alex says he needed a hand to get aboard because he was blind. Jarrett stopped. There's nothing you can do. So like, yeah.
And like, to be fair, Lymond wants to go out on this adrenaline rush and positive energy, and he doesn't want to scare his friends unnecessarily, until they can't make a difference.
I do like this sort of return to form of St. Mary's, where we've got the original crew back together, even Lancelot, and all that we've done is sort of replace Adam with Jarrett and bring Archie along.
Mm-hmm.
That was a nice sort of throwback.
Yeah,
the boys are all back.
I did think that there's one moment at the end where perhaps there's a sign that Lymond is not like 100% suicidal. Like, he doesn't ride the mill to his death. Like, there's a point where like he stood there, he's got the fisherman's voice, he remembers the song, and then it says, then it seemed that an impatient voice said, come. So he dropped from the mill, and the cold swirling flow of the Arthur received him. So it's like he jumps off the mill before it hits the bridge, because this voice, I mean, we're assuming it's the Dom again, unless the voice of God or voice of Philippa, like, who knows? But usually when there's a voice, it's the Dom de Tance. So he does follow the voice and jumps off the mill instead of like riding it into the crash.
But I think he thinks that that's going to lead to his death, though, because if you look at, it's like the second paragraph on that page,
mm-hmm.
there would have been a certain splendor in crashing straight into the bridge, except that he did not wish to be rescued.
Oh, right.
And in the river, he would be his own master.
Right. You're right.
And that song he remembers is the song that he and Philippa overheard, right?
Right.
It is, which
yeah.
I'm just going to read to you when you're ready.
Yeah.
Sure.
Within the walls of thy house, thy wife will be as a vine, bearing an abundance of good fruit in season. And thy sons set round the table will be fresh and beautiful as a grove of young olive trees. So I took that as like one, just rubbing it in about not being able to be fruitful with his wife. Yeah. But also I feel like the trauma of Kairedin has been lurking under this, like everything. And we have it with the reference to the mill, and we have it with the sons, fresh and beautiful, that like we know what's underlying the very worst of Lymond's suicidal impulses and trauma is still the death of his son.
Yeah. Yeah. And then he sinks under the water. What's the final bit?
It's just the second part of
the second part of the olive tree part.
Yeah, the ones.
So he's sinking in the water, and he gets struck by the mill, and I just wrote not dead.
No.
So
hey, you don't know, the rest of this book could be
he's not dead. Come on.
I would bet much amount of money on not being dead.
At least not yet. He might be seriously injured and die later. But
yeah, I'm not saying he's going to survive the book. Not saying that at all. But I do think he survives this chapter.
So is this adventure the fulfillment of prophecy? The prophecy being, in fire is your friend, in flood is your foe, in powder is your release. Because like I said, it has all three elements to it, but I don't quite know how we can scan it so that the prophecy fits here.
Yeah.
It totally made me think of it.
I guess one of the questions is his friend what will kill him because he wants to die, or is his friend what keeps him alive? Because
right.
Or is his release death? In powder is your release. Is that where the death comes in?
But if he doesn't die, which he's not going to die here. So if he doesn't die, then he's not released.
Or if the water is your foe because it's not killing you because you want to die, then maybe he's not going to drown here. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's hard. Like I want this to fit this situation, but I also want something that happens that actually fits that prophecy a little better.
Yeah.
I think you have some pieces of the puzzle, but not all of them yet.
Okay.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of the prophecy, I mean, like, and this is just sort of like a prophecy in general thing, like throughout history, prophecy in literature and religion and everything is like, doesn't make any sense until it's over.
Yeah.
So I think at the end of the book, we should go back and like look at the various prophecies and see like what we think they meant afterward.
The only one I think for sure is certain and true is your father's two sons shall never meet again. So, and that one we figured out already.
Yeah, it was him and Gavin.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I forget what the other ones are. I want to make a list.
Yeah.
There's a couple in there.
Yeah. Surely there's a list somewhere. All the prophecies in the Lymond Chronicles.
Oh yeah, and all kinds of forum discussions and deconstructions and guesses and stuff.
So interesting.
And you'll be able to read it.
That's prophecy is a huge part of another book series that Dee and I have read called The Wheel of Time, where like every other chapter there's a new prophecy or vision, and like they all actually scan. They all lead to something, and you can go back in the end and figure them all out. But it's just crazy. So
like there's stuff in like book 1 that doesn't pay off until book 14. Like, but it pays off. Like, yeah, I don't think there's really anything that gets left hanging in real time, which is pretty crazy.
I mean, that's what like it surprised me that Dunnett does that here with like the bit about the Dom whispering in Lymond's ear Philippa's name, and then that comes back. Like that surprised me. And then you realize like, oh, so she really was like planning the whole time for him to end up with Philippa. And Dee, you picked it up in the first scene that you was in.
Well, to be sure, I didn't think, I mean, to be fair, I didn't actually think I was right. So I just thought that Philippa was such a dynamic character to have a kid, like in a book series like this, to have a kid that was that interesting and that dynamic of a character was weird. And so I was like, why is this girl like so interesting? I was like, well, yeah.
So
probably been a number of moments throughout these books where one of us has said something super early and you've just had to keep a super straight face, Laura.
Oh yeah, there's a whole bunch of comments too, like making fun of me keeping a straight face, or like glass in front of my face so I didn't like reveal anything.
It's a nice thing.
That's hilarious. Oh my gosh. Yeah, I will say, like, I didn't read the comments for the first, I don't know, like half of the series. I wasn't reading the comments under the videos, but then I think I realized that everyone was doing a really good job of not spoiling us in the comments, so then I started reading them. So
yeah, I think almost any one of them that has a spoiler, I think, has a spoiler warning, like don't read any further.
Yeah, so I don't think I've ever been spoiled. Well, I know I haven't ever been spoiled reading the comments, so you guys have done an amazing job.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's, and the way we've been doing the last couple videos, we've really ramped up production. But
yeah,
when a new video posts on Saturday, I'll go back and read the comments. It's like, what section was this?
I
what
know.
did we talk about? I can't remember.
Right.
It was like
3 weeks ago or something.
3-4 weeks ago now.
Yeah, that's true. But it's been fun to see all the comments and like get that.
I really enjoy reading them. Keep them coming.
Yeah.
All right, guys, any final thoughts on these chapters, predictions for the rest, hopes and dreams?
Well, Lymond's not dead.
Lymond's not dead. And
because he's got to go back to England.
We got to wrap up this war, France-Spain thing quickly. Like hopefully this like destruction of the bridges and whatnot is like the end of this. Like it just needs to, we need to move. I want the rest of the book to be just characters, like things happening to our characters, not this army moved this direction and attack some random village or whatever. Like, I don't care.
And even if the war part's not over, Lymond's probably pretty injured from this. He's not going to bounce right back and go back to war. Like, he's probably going to be like, all right, your service is over. Goodbye.
You're now retired. I do think we're headed back to England, if not Scotland. I think England, because I really do think we need a showdown with Margaret Lennox before the book ends. Philippa and Austen and Sevilla and Richard have all gone back. I'm assuming Philippa has gone to Kate, so she's in England.
Unless Austen has done something to keep her.
But yeah, that's true. But he lives nearby. Like, he lives nearby where Kate lives. So.
Well, Flaw Valleys is in England anyway. I keep forgetting that. So she's in England no matter what.
Yeah.
She goes back to Kate or stays with Austen.
So somehow we've got to get Lymond to England, which I'm not sure how that's going to work. Like, he's injured. Is Archie just going to drag him there? Like, I don't know.
Maybe he'll convalesce there.
Maybe Marta will create some convoluted plan to like get him to England because Philippa's in England and therefore Lymond needs to be in England according to Marta. Who knows? So I think that's gonna happen.
We still need our answers about the relationship. Why did Sevilla marry Gavin?
Did he blackmail her? Was there some sort of, I don't know. Was she like overwhelmed by grief and out of her mind and he took advantage of? It still seems weird.
It doesn't make sense unless she was with Francis before. So that has to be the truth.
Right. Yeah, has to be. I really do want to, I'll be a little bit sad if we don't see like Mary's death and Elizabeth, or at least some like that happening soon, because what time of year are we in right now?
August. Or like in mid-August. They keep talking about the heat. There were a couple dates in this section. I think the latest was sometime in mid-August.
So Mary dies before the end of the year. Because this is 1558. So sometime before the end of the year, Mary's going to die and Elizabeth's going to take over.
There was a line that we kind of skipped over about like what was happening in the rest of the world. And it was like all was starting to happen in England and Queen Mary's fever was getting worse. So
yeah, that's why I was thinking of that. I knew there was some connection. So I wonder if we're going to get, before the end of the book, like she's going to die and Elizabeth is going to take over. But that also seems like a rather momentous thing, and we don't have very much book left. So I don't know. We'll see. Maybe
go ahead, sorry.
I was just saying maybe it's just an interesting place to end the book with like a momentous change about to happen or something.
Well, we did start with the chessboard getting rearranged after Henry VIII died.
Right.
I think what I was wishing also, in addition to everything you all said, was some better resolution between Lymond and Richard, because I really loved their relationship in Game of Kings and Queen's Play and Disorderly Knights when Richard stood with his brother, and I was like, come on guys, talk to each other.
Yeah,
it's been super terrible. So yeah, the Sevilla and Lymond relationship, the Richard and Lymond relationship, that would be really nice.
Some Marta and Lymond relationship.
Yeah, what do you want from Marta at this point? She's just been pretty awful.
I mean, I think it's connected to like her experience of trauma, just that she would somehow like acknowledge what's been done to her, like that she would somehow come to a point where she sees the truth of what the Dame de Détente has like wrought in her life, and is able to heal from that in some way, or I don't know. But I don't know if it's possible. Like, the way the character is written, I just don't know how that can happen.
Yeah, I'm starting not to care too much about her, to be honest. Like, I either want like a big hero turn or like fade into the distance. I don't know. I mean, I don't think she's going to get a happy relationship with the Crawfords. Like, I don't think they're going to accept her into the family, because that would mean Richard would have to know things.
I mean, Sevilla, I think, indicated that she would. Like, Sevilla said, if you need anything, come to me, kind of thing. So I do think it's possible if Marta doesn't, like, if Marta agrees not to tell Richard stuff.
Yeah.
Then you get a whole everybody's lying to each other business. So.
But I meant to be like openly embraced by the family and be like, you are one of us now because of your parentage. I don't think that's going to happen. Because then Richard complicates things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Because she's his aunt.
And we've had a number of deaths in the last couple chapters. Guzelle, Isabel Rosette, He Who Shall Not Be Named, Strozzi. I don't think the death is over. I think we're going to lose someone before the end of the book, or more than one someone.
Right. I think our prime candidates for who dies, because I really would like to believe that Lymond and Philippa will make it to the end of the book.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to go on that assumption, even though that's perhaps not a well-founded assumption. But I think our prime candidates for who's going to die are Sevilla, Marta, maybe Richard.
Maybe one of the St. Mary's men.
Yeah, like Alec or Adam.
No, not Adam. Don't say
Archie. I mean, trying to think of the ones that would really like pull on the heartstrings, you know.
I would be sad if Jarrett died. He's an idiot, but I like him.
Yeah, Jarrett, he's a possibility. It's like, who's gonna die that we're gonna care about the most, you know?
Exactly.
Yeah. I do think Sevilla or Marta are probably I think those are the biggest candidates in my mind.
I would see Sevilla first, just because she's already sort of not doing great.
Yeah, I could see them having like some sort of reconciliation and then she dies or something. What were you gonna say?
No, I just agreed. I said,
Why Marta?
It's just hard to see a resolution for her character. That's, because I don't see her and Jared getting any better. Like, you know, that their relationship doesn't seem, I feel like it would take a fundamental change of personality on the part of one of them for the relationship to get any better, and I don't see that happening. And I don't see her like fading off into like becoming random merchant and blah, you know, like, or I just don't see her character ending that way. So either she kind of gets embraced into the bosom of the Crawford family, which I think Philippe gave some good reasons why that might not happen, or she dies in some sort of, I don't know, attempt to fix something, like, or in some misguided, like, keeping Lymond and Philippa together disaster of a plan that won't work at all, you know.
Just had another thought actually about Marta, is we haven't seen how she reacts to learning Guzelle is dead.
Oh,
if she ever finds out the news.
That's true. The other thing though is I don't see her going to England. So Maybe she just stays in France.
All right.
There's only 6 more chapters to find out, so we're getting precariously close.
Well, thank you everyone for watching and commenting. We'll see you next time.
Bye.
All right.